Okay, let's welcome our guests who are waiting so far. Hello and welcome. Hey, Margaret.
Hi, Laurie.
How are you today?
I'm very good, thank you. And you?
I'm good, thanks. Good to see you again.
Good.
Good. Did you have a good Easter break?
I had a lovely break. The weather was beautiful.
Nice.
And yes, it was lovely.
Very nice, very nice. Good. And Harriet, welcome. Greetings from Scotland.
Hi there, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm a bit chilly, it has to be said today. It's been trying to snow, but which I think I'm objecting to now that the flowers are out.
I know, there's something wrong with that. It was snowing a little bit here yesterday.
Okay, cool. Where's here?
South London, Croydon.
Oh, okay. Are we South? Okay.
I was very, it was 5 degrees out, but there were little flurries coming down.
Yeah.
It was very surprising. Let's see, we have a couple of other people here. I'm just not seeing them all. Amanda and Noella's in the waiting room. I'm just going to admit her. I know I have my hide non-video participants is what's going on here. I'm just having an adjustment. There we go. There we go. So welcome everyone. Please, if you would, add to the chat where you're calling from. Say hello. That's always nice. People like to know who's from where. And hello, Steve Cliff. Good to see you.
Hello, Laurie.
And Noella, good to see you. Haven't seen you in a little while, I think.
Yeah, putting in practice what I learned from these sessions.
Taking breaks and things like that.
Yeah, nice to see you too, Laurie.
Yeah, great. And Amanda and Sarah, welcome. We'll get going in a minute or so. It's not quite 4 o'clock yet. It'd be great if you would add to the chat. We've got Scotland and Ireland represented so far, and Romania. And I know we've got a bit of England here. So today we're going to be talking about learning and action. So action-based learning, experiential learning. And let's see, expecting a couple more people. So just welcome, come on in. Hey, Stephen Light.
Hey, Laurie.
How are you doing?
Very good. How you doing?
Yeah, good, good. Ready to go. So soon after Easter.
I know, short week, and the client said to me, "Oh, yeah, it's already Wednesday." I thought, that's not. I forgot we had a Monday. So yeah, it's already Wednesday. Tomorrow's Thursday, and what weekend is here?
And the weekend is here. Yeah, yeah. Well, welcome everyone to Learning in Action. We're going to be talking about experiential learning and some tips about how to create some great experiences, even on virtual. So I really want to have the virtual application. I think learning is very similar for a human being, whether it's in person or virtual. I know that probably sounds ridiculous. The experience might be quite different, but how learning happens in here is really pretty much the same, and we still need to tend to the brain and what it needs in order for us to learn. I have this, one of my favorite expressions, happy brains learn better. So that's going to be a theme. I see some nods about that. And you know me, I like interactive sessions. Anybody want to say something about happy brains learn better?
As far as I'm concerned, when you are not focused on on being afraid of anything. You just happen to learn. I mean, it's natural. For me, this is it.
That's so great. If you're not focused on fear, on something you're afraid of, then you have much more capacity to learn. That's a very nice, concise statement. So happy brains learn better. We want to keep our participants, our learners in a positive frame of mind so that they can have more space for focusing on learning. Great. People are coming in. Oh, and Amanda, you're coming from Barbados. Oh, and I bet it's warm there. Everyone here is freezing. Thanks for bringing us some sunshine. Great. So here's what to expect. A little bit of colleague conversations here, but here's what else you can expect from this webinar. If you've been here with me before on our monthly-ish webinars, you know that I like to have some interaction, and we do a little bit of discussion, some topics, a little bit of brain-related topics, and today we'll be discussing learning by doing, or experiential learning, and the focus on fun, motivation, and allowing mistakes, and what the brain has to do with all of those, or what they have to do with the brain, and how it changes our thinking. Just like Noella said in the beginning, if we're occupied by fear, the brain doesn't have space for learning. So we look at fun, motivation, and allowing mistakes very specifically, although there's many other things that keep the brain happy. We'll have an interactive activity where you'll be in a breakout room with each other, having a conversation about how you'll take this stuff out yourself to those people who you support in learning. And then I want to share with you how we apply these topics to our own virtual programs. So we'll be talking about that, and that's showing you specifically the design of the Rewired to Relate program and how we try to keep positivity going and keep motivation and not focus on fear. All right, so this is interactive, and just welcome to those of you who've just come in. Silka, Sue, Monica, I don't think I've said hello to you, so hi and welcome. Come on in. We're talking about discussing and sharing about learning in action. So I'd like you to start thinking about ways that you have learned through action, learned by doing. Could be on-the-job learning, or it could have been in an experiential workshop, or in a coaching session even, where you were role-playing perhaps, or in any kind of learning situation. And I'd love to hear some examples, things you have learned by doing. You want to share in the chat box, that would be great. So much we learned by doing. Stephen.
I can share. I recently bought a stationary bike to cycle indoors, given the weather that's been outdoors. And so I watched a whole lot of videos and I read about it, and I'm used to being on my bike outdoors, but only once I got on it and then started playing around with the gears and that I really get to understand how to use it, how to drive the right power through it. So I actually had to get on it to really experience what it was like using this particular bike.
That's great. That's great. And I'd love to come back to that, about what was motivating and such about that. We'll come back to that. Sue, tell us about the ukulele.
Well, I had an urge to play the ukulele, so I joined a class, and we were all beginners together with the teacher, and we also had to practice every week. So there was kind of songs that we had to repeat during the week, ready for the next class the next week, and that made a big difference.
Great. So practice, 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 I'm hearing. Anybody else want to share something you've learned by doing?
I'll happily share something.
Great.
I recently learned that when you move a washing machine, you have to first switch off the water.
Okay.
But I learned by getting absolutely soaking on quite a cold day.
That'll teach you, is the phrase that people would use in response to that.
Yeah, I also learned, though, that my neighbours downstairs are really nice, because when the water came through to them, he said, "Oh, it's happened before, don't worry about it."
Wow.
So
That's
two learnings
impressive.
in one go.
Two learnings in one go. Neighbors are nice, and you've got to disconnect the water. Fantastic. Yes, mistakes can lead us to learning. And there is a theme that will be coming out through this conversation, that we don't have to have mistakes. I've heard many people say we have to make mistakes in order to learn. they provide fantastic learning opportunities. They don't have to be there. Steve.
Yeah, I just, what Sue just said made me think of acting and learning a script. You know, the process that you go through is you read a script together. Well, first of all, you read it by yourself, then you read it with others and you play a part. But then it's only when you're on your feet and kind of using your body and kind of using the reactions of other people that the actual story and the words stick and it kind of comes to life. So you go through several stages of learning which build upon each other. So I think the importance of other people in that learning process and kind of how that works is kind of interesting as well.
Yeah. I'm wanting to know more. I vaguely recollect you saying something about having acted, but I'll have to learn more about that another time. Your acting career. So everyone has learned something through doing. Oh, Silke, what were you going to say?
Yes, I was going to say, for me, the prime example is language learning, right? Because German is my original native language and I had to learn English. And to me, I am also a Spanish learner, if you will. However, because I'm not applying it on a daily basis and using it on a daily basis, I couldn't save my life in Spanish at all. So to me, this is a primary example of learning by doing. However, you can't make progress unless somebody actually corrects you when you do say something wrong and you have that feedback to integrate and improve.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. It certainly helps. If we're never corrected, we'll never learn the right way. Although we don't, I'm going to repeat it. We don't have to make mistakes because there's some things you're getting right. Yeah. Yeah. So here's what I'd like you to think about. Of those things, or at least one thing that you're focusing on that you have learned by doing, how enjoyable was it? The whole learning process. How enjoyable was it? And what made it enjoyable? How motivated were you? And what was the attitude towards mistakes? Those are 3 themes that we'll be following. Silke.
Yeah, so the interesting thing is that, again, I'm invoking my German heritage and the fact that Germans don't do anything unless they can be perfect at it, right? So that was one of those things where I needed to be willing to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And it was very enjoyable for me to learn and get feedback because I was motivated, because I came to a different country. I needed to be able to communicate, be understood, and understand people. And so I was highly motivated. So for me, it was actually fun to really soak up the language and take it on as my now better language, I have to say.
Yeah. So there was motivation because you were successful at times, you communicated with people, probably connected with people and enjoyed that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. There needs to be some kind of motivation present for most of us. Not just a whip, but something that creates positivity, generates something for us and creates a want. And
Yes, I also want to note that your audio, unless it's just on my end, is going in and out, and it's not really that good because we're recording this. So
are others having that problem?
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit, and I know, and let me. I will try my other microphone. Let's see if this is any better.
Yes.
Several people are saying that's better. Okay. I tested it earlier. It sounded not better. Okay, great. Thank you, Silke. See, feedback, learning, fantastic. Others, think about these 3 factors of enjoyment, motivation, and attitude towards mistakes. So Sue, yeah.
So going back to the ukulele, it was really enjoyable because of the group and we were all learning together, and there was an attitude of kind of laughing when we got it wrong. And also our teacher was brilliant in that he started us off very gently, but at the same time we could see real progress. So even in the very first lesson, we did 3 songs, which were just very easy chords. And then he built it up and he kept stretching us. And every time there was a new song and he'd play it through and we'd think, oh, that's really, really hard. then it was very satisfying to go away, practice it during the week, and we'd all come back and we could play it together, and it sounded good. So
Yeah.
There was a motivation in wanting to keep up with the group, definitely, and progress to the improver class. And there was just a very easy attitude towards mistakes. You know, it wasn't embarrassing. It was just a bit of fun, really.
Nice. Really nice to be able to create that. Having a bit of fun with mistakes. Stephen.
So the link between enjoyable and motivated. So I think about getting on a bike and cycling and really pushing myself, stretching myself. The enjoyment level was a little bit lower, but the motivation was a lot higher because I knew why I wanted to do it. And then attitude towards mistakes, you know, get it right, try this, try that. They'd hurt, some of the mistakes. They definitely hurt. But I eventually found my way through it because the motivation overcame some of that lack of enjoyment.
Yeah. So the motivation was the thing that got you going to begin with and got you through the difficult bits. And then you probably started enjoying it, and except for those mistakes. When you say mistakes and I think about those indoor bikes, I'm thinking you fell off and that was probably painful. Yes.
I picked the wrong setting. And so I don't like to give up. And so I just was pounding through the setting that this can't be this hard. There are people that do this every day. It can't be this hard. And eventually I figured out.
Yeah.
There's something about safety in there, isn't there? I mean, thinking about me and my washing machine. I was with a friend, so we both got soaked, and we both laughed a great deal about the fact that we got soaked as we ran around the flat trying to find the tap that switches off the water. That was the other bit that I had to learn.
Oh, yeah.
And I was thinking, if I had been younger and my bigger brother had been there, I probably would have been made to feel really stupid. And nobody made me feel stupid. It was just a mistake. It was no big deal. And I think there's something about the safety where you're learning. So if you're on a bike and you fall off and nobody sees you, it doesn't really matter. You get back on again and have another go. But if there are people whose judgment prescribes a feeling, then that might make the difference.
And we are by nature wanting to be connected to others and be liked and be accepted by others. And so that judgment around mistakes is huge to the brain, and it creates a lot of fear and it stops us from learning. It's a really big stopper, a really big block to learning, this fear of making mistakes. And yeah, Steve.
I was just thinking about motivation, if I can, and it just made me think of the difference between, you know, if someone's given you get a qualification if you do this test, you learn all these facts and you get a good mark and you get all that recognition. And that's kind of motivation, but it's more of an external motivation that, you know, you do this and you get a recognition and, you know, you're qualified to do something. But then internal motivation is obviously different. You know, it's what's driving you, you know, as an individual to actually acquire that knowledge or that learning. And I'm just noticing there's a difference in the motivation, or there can be.
Yeah. Which one feels better to you?
Well, the one that aligns to your internal motivation. You know, so all the things when you're teaching children, you know, if you pass your exams, you'll get £100. That's one kind of motivation. But if they're really enjoying their subject and it's taught well, then that's a whole different ball game.
Yeah. I believe, I don't know if there are stats on this. I bet there are. I do believe that people learn more when it's internally, when we have internal motivation. I think we retain information because we want it. You know, if we're just, I went through school cramming for exams and learning what I had to learn in order to pass them, and none of that stuff stuck. So the things I enjoyed, which at the time happened to be maths and science, those things stuck better, and they built on each other over time. And so there was some motivation of, I did it. I managed that, you know. Facts from history, for example, gone. Vacant. You know, I might have known them for 24 hours in order to pass an exam, but that's pretty common experience with people. So if we are facilitating learning, meaning providing a program, whether that's a leadership program or any other kind of program, a ukulele program, or we're coaching people on anything where they are reflecting and learning, we really need to have ways to have them be motivated. Fun doesn't have to be fun, but at least motivated, positive, creating something that has them feel good, keeping the fear away, mind open, and free from mistakes. Again, to keep the fear away and the mind open. Those are really critical things. They're not the only things, but they're really, in terms of emotions and safety, as Harriet said, really keeping people present and engaged. And we aren't always naturally like that. You know, if we're providing learning, wanting to teach something, I don't know that we're always in the mindset. And I think of all these parents who've been teaching their kids through COVID and lockdown and needing to teach kids, and they're completely stressed out because they're working and both parents are working and they've got kids and little ones and big ones. And, you know, I can't imagine the stress there. And when we're stressed, we're not great at having fun. And we're stressed, we're not great at having permission for mistakes. And it must have been so hard to create this kind of environment where, like, let's be motivated, let's play, let's engage. And I know some parents did, and I'm sure it took quite a bit of self-management in order to do that. Anybody have that experience about homeschooling and during the, yeah? What did it take, Noella, to really be, because you know so well, as you said to start with.
Yeah, so now I was reflecting also on Silke's idea of perfectionism, because in our culture it's also very important not to make mistakes. Luckily, I made a lot of mistakes, so I beat my culture in a way. So this led me thinking of how I learned to be a follower instead of a leader, because in our profession we tend to be leaders. And sometimes we actually learn, I wouldn't say more, but different things by following, not by leading. So following in terms of losing control consciously, by choice, and leaving others make their own mistakes, express themselves, grow in other ways that we don't need necessarily to control. And this is something that I experienced as a parent. I needed to to put in place the "I'm not here" strategy, because I couldn't have done all the things that I planned if I didn't take enough time for each of them to be done in a way that is also useful, not just to check a list, but to make them meaningful. So yes, I'm not here strategy worked for me.
Okay. Let's open this up to everyone and see if there's some themes we can come up with, like how to make activities fun, not just for children, but for ourselves. How do you create learning through action and make it fun, enjoyable, positive, not just motivating, but just play for the sake of play, perhaps? For example, Stephen.
I don't know if this is where you're pointing, but when I run workshops with people in a virtual space, I might hold up some cards with some questions on, or drop them in the Dropbox, or put it on a Jamboard and get them to choose one, and in a group format, just shout out. And so they are sharing something about their personal life, creating some connection. And it's quite fun hearing, what's the thing you keep losing? It's like my cell phone, and I have to have people phone it and try and find, and everyone's running around the house trying to find my cell phone. So there's simple questions that create connection, and it's fun.
That's great. And I've heard teams that in businesses, when they, they have fun Friday lunches where everyone dresses up and does something fun, not specifically around learning, but around just engaging with one another and being motivated. Yeah. Any other examples about how to create fun activities? Sue?
I noticed with the kids when they were doing their online learning, some minor young teenagers, that the lessons that really engaged them was, say, learning German, normally quite boring, but then sometimes they do a quiz and they're in competitions, they're online together and it's who could get the best score. But it wasn't like a mean competition. It was just hilarious. You know, I could hear my son going, I can't believe you just got that one right. No, I didn't, you know, and it just seemed to be a really fun environment that I think really engaged them a lot more and helped them to learn more.
Yeah. I resisted this whole gamification idea for some time until I started using Duolingo. Duolingo owns me. It knows how to trigger my buttons every day and say, if you want to learn, I'm working on Norwegian at the moment. If you want to learn Norwegian, you got to do a little bit every day. And there's the leaderboards and the competition, but it is in the spirit of fun. Most of the time. Sometimes I really need to. Yeah. So yeah, Noella.
Just a quick mention about mistakes. So my daughter loves when I make mistakes because I've been taking Spanish lessons, and she's studying, apart from English, she's studying Italian. And she loves it how I misinterpret some terms, and she loves when I do for her. I'm not sure how to put this, like spreadsheets of exercises that I build by hand. So not online, but by hand, that I strive to get involved in her learning. So she loves it.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Personalized learning plan. Yeah. Great. Any other thoughts about creating fun? Silka.
Just moving around sometimes. I mean, in this particular arena, we're sitting in front of Zoom all day long, just getting up and dancing and or, you know, doing the shake or whatever. Sometimes gets, you know, the juices flowing, if you will.
Yeah, great. Doesn't even have to do with the topic necessarily, but let's just, you know, boogie down for a bit and bring some energy and some good chemicals back.
Disco.
A little disco. All right. Fantastic. And Sarah is singing, bringing in music. Absolutely. Music really brings us alive. So fun, positivity, motivation, they are all, you know, related. Positivity, we can recognize that from dopamine, which is a motivating chemical, feels good. We get that from success, from feeling good, from recognition from others, belonging to one another. So those are things that create positivity and motivation. Oxytocin is another thing. So several of you, like Sue, you mentioned your group, and Steve, you mentioned, so Sue's group was ukulele learning, and Steve, you were talking about being on stage and practicing a script together. Those came to mind. And Harriet, even doing this with your friend, sister, neighbor, I forget who you said you were with the washing machine. There's a connection that happens. We make mistakes together, we get vulnerable together. That can create trust between us. That creates oxytocin, which is a very strong chemical of connection and trust. So when we go through experiences, even tough, especially tough experiences together, we actually build bonds that keep us connected, focused, and motivated. So I noticed that when I was delivering coach training courses, and we would challenge people, sort of emotionally challenge people, and the journey that people would take over a weekend, 3-day program, would create such strong bonds, like family bonds between people, especially if we did something that was emotionally challenging for people. It was really quite remarkable. And I've used that approach many times. Let's do this. Come on, we're in it together, you know, and we seem to be built for that as humans. So Sue, the way you talked about your son learning German, that could even be that same thing. A little bit of competition between people. We're in it together. We're competing with one another, but because it's fun competition, it connects us rather than divides. So that's something to keep in mind for when you are supporting others in their learning journey. And that might even happen between you as an individual coach and an individual client. So it doesn't have to be you're learning the same thing together, but you're on the journey together. Does that resonate with some of you as a coach? You know those times where you've been with clients and they're going through a hard time and you're with them. You're in it with them, not lost in it with them, but you're there, you're holding, you're really being a partner on their journey. And that can create such strong bonds and openness and availability for more learning. Any other thoughts about positivity, generating positivity or motivation? Well, let's talk about successes and failures a little more specifically. We've mentioned this, and here's my a quote here from Sugar Ray Leonard saying, you know, if you never know failure, you will never know success. We found this picture and don't necessarily believe it 100%, as I've mentioned a couple of times, but it is a provocative thing to talk about. I was in a team coaching the other day, and the boss's boss of the team said something about you must fail in order to learn. And I was completely intimidated by challenging him in that situation, but most of the time I would. Let's not say that we have to fail in order to succeed. We don't have to fail in order to learn. It does provide many good learning opportunities. And in fact, the brain will focus your attention. With fear, with failure, your attention is really focused. Here's a problem, I need to fix it. And it is like a hard focus, and it does help you learn. It's just not a sustainable way. So if you're creating learning environments for people, sure, an occasional failure, you know, they happen anyway. It's not like you have to design them. They do happen. And if we have permission around them and there's not so much fear, that can help us stay open to the learning. But knowing that fear and challenge does point attention, focus attention, and create sort of like I want to say peak moments of learning, and I don't mean that in the most positive sense, but really memorable moments of learning. So Harriet, you're never going to forget about that washing machine example. And Stephen, with the bicycle, you're not going to forget those different settings that set you up. You know, but they come from fear. You will always remember them because there's always fear associated with them. And so if we always have fear-based learning, we're always going to have fear associated with the things that we learn to do. Because our experiences and our emotions are stored together. Amanda, you have a hand raised. You're on, yeah.
Yes, I'm just wanting to agree with you on the fact that failure isn't a requirement, but certainly the willingness to fail, the willingness to, being willing to fail, yes, would maybe be a more useful way to make the phrase, to say you need to be willing to fail in order to succeed or to learn, but it's not a prerequisite.
Absolutely would agree with that. If we can't fail at all, like me speaking languages, I just, I'm horrible at that. And willing to put myself out there and be corrected all the time. And Silke, you were great at that, it sounds like. I'm a little more shy about that. And my willingness to fail is pretty low. But if I had a big willingness to fail, like no problem, go ahead, I would practice a lot more and learn a lot more. I totally agree. Willingness to fail. And if we don't have the stigma around the failing, then willingness to fail is even easier. Yeah, thank you for bringing that in.
It's also possibly something in that saying. It says, if you never know failure, and know is about the self-awareness of, because someone else might not see what you've done as failure. So it's a reflection on, I wanted to be here, didn't quite go the way I wanted it to go. Okay, let me reflect on that, and only on that self-reflection will you also know success. So rather than being too dogmatic about, is it fear, is it failure, is it this? Yeah. Is there a reflection around what you want and where you want to get to?
I love that reframe, Harriet. Thank you very much. I totally on in with you on that. Because if we don't know and understand what failure is, we might not know and understand what success is. We might not even appreciate the success. That's great. Thank you. Love that. I'm keeping that picture then. Any other thoughts about successes and failures, Steve?
Yeah, that I really like that reframe as well. It made me think of, it's a very easy thing to say, you have to fail to be successful. And everyone kind of knows it, cognitively and intellectually. Oh yeah, well, that just makes sense. And surely everyone knows that. But it's how when you're in that threat kind of state where you've done something wrong, what helped you get, or what helped you give yourself to actually reflect and learn from it? Because it's a really conscious thing you have to do then, to say, well, hell, I did that wrong, but you know what? I learned this from it. And, you know, and there's no, I mean, maybe if you're a teacher of a child or something, you can take the child through that process. But for us, you know, lonesome adults, it's quite hard to find that support unless you've got an understanding manager or whatever.
Yeah, that's great. There needs to be something motivating us through that. Yeah. And I've been reading some things about shame and how people who are prone to shame have a harder time through that, especially if they don't have people they're close to around them to encourage and move through that. So it gets complicated. It gets complicated. But as providers of learning, we need to make sure that we are providing that safe space and being the partners in the journey. Noella? Oh.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about what failure is actually. Actually is a reaction within ourselves to this idea of I'm not worthy enough, I don't belong in this tribe, and this is one of our basic fears, to be thrown away from the tribe and never loved again. So I think the risk taking in failing is directly proportional to how much we are willing to be cast away by the tribe and to be connected with ourselves and love ourselves despite not fulfilling a task or
and we have some control about that ourselves. And the people we work with, we might not have control over that. All we can do is help them feel safe. Silke.
Yeah, I have a question about when those things are imprinted. There is this book, The Boy That Was Raised Like a Dog. I don't know if you've ever read it. I have quoted it a million times. It's basically the bottom line is that we are imprinted with how we deal with adversity in our lives in our earlier years. So 1 through 7, I would argue maybe a little more, but and so I'm wondering whether it is even, I don't even know where I was going with this. Basically, you know, our risk-taking aptitude or proclivity, is that something that is imprinted in us early on by how we are being parented? And that is going to be the way we're going to view things the rest of our lives.
Yeah, it's hard to change the things that have been imprinted on us in those first 7 years. Really hard to change. I think we can be conscious of them and work at it, but I think it's much harder. Yeah. And I don't know what your book, Boy Who Was Raised Like a Dog?
The Boy That Was Raised Like a Dog was written by a psychotherapist that was brought into forensic situations to help the judges make decisions on what the best sentence was. And each chapter is a particular story, and then he debriefs on it. It's fascinating. It's an eye-opener. Yeah.
Because our emotional brains are very similar to dog brains, you know, and I mean, they are. It's a mammal brain, you know, it's a social mammal brain. Our emotional brain. We've got this other part of our brain that changes things and, you know, can have us override the mammal brain. But there's a lot of similarity. I'm just noticing the time, and I'm wanting to have an interactive element. So I'm going to move us forward. What I would like you to do, you're going to be in a learning group in just a moment, a breakout room with 3 or 4 people. If the numbers work out, I know Rhoda's doing some magic over there of organizing rooms. You're going to have about 10 minutes and consider people you support, whose learning you support, whether it's a coaching client, whether it's a fellow ukulele player or a child, your own children or other children, other family, friends, participants that you have if you run trainings, employees, team members, anyone that you support learning for. Just think of them, and the questions are going to be, how could you support their learning by creating more fun? That could be fun, engagement, positivity, you know, having it just be light Yeah. How could you support their learning by creating more positivity and motivation? And how can you have more room for mistakes? Our brain has very strong error detectors, and we are drawn to the mistakes. We are drawn to looking at here's what's not working. And very easy when you're outside looking at someone learning, very easy to go, hey, what, this little bit's wrong, and miss the 99% that's right. So that's the conversation to have. If you want to just jot those questions down or, take the essence of them with you. Let's do a 10-minute conversation in groups of 3 or 4. I'll let you go and do that. Thanks, Rhoda, for setting those up. Welcome back. How are your conversations?
Very rich.
And oh, we've got one group back. 2 groups are still coming back. Any top tips?
Get Sue to be your mom.
Can I go back and have that happen?
Only on a good day, though.
Oh, great. Welcome back.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're still waiting for people to arrive.
Yep, they're just coming back. Yeah. Silke, you were going to say.
Yes, I took just a few notes, which I can probably screw up the feedback, but let me try. So the group worked well together in normalizing what the difficulties may be as something that we all have to deal with, keeps the discussion light a little bit, and having positive attitude as the leader of the group also probably helps people to be more relaxed. Keeping humor and keeps people learning, and having a beginner's mind is something to encourage, because that allows us to be open to learning new things, as well as exaggeration as a tool to allow people to hash out, like, what is the worst thing that could possibly happen, and that isn't gonna happen. Is gonna allow folks to be a little bit lighter about that. And then one of the things to keep engagement in the discussion is to validate the feedback that is provided by anyone that is participating, because the more we pay attention to certain things, the more we will get those certain things.
Yeah. So if you validate feedback you're getting, yeah, okay. Great tips. Thanks, Silke. Other groups?
They weren't mine. They were the groups. I'm just saying.
Groups. Great tips from the group. Others want to share tips from your conversations? Anybody? Well,
for our group, I don't know if somebody else wants to, because I did lead the conversation. Our group talked about use of role plays and getting teams. So Harriet, I would love you to share your example, because I think it brought both, the purpose of the gathering, as well as how it really, inspired creativity.
Oh, okay. Put on the spot. I was thinking, oh, we're in trouble. We didn't pull anything together. So in terms of, the role play that I'm coaching a team, and we've been struggling with rather dull conversations about stakeholders. But we had managed, using Jamboard, to get them down to 3 key ones. And then we divided up the team. There were 6, so 3 pairs. And they were each given a character. So one was a pair of clients, another one was a pair of service providers, another one was a pair of from the internally, so the CEO and the board. And the remaining people were left to decide which questions they would ask, or they had a set of questions that they were going to use to interview these stakeholders. And the stakeholders went away to think about 4 questions. What do I get from this team? What could be better? What suggestions would I make for improvement, etc. And then they came back and acted out with they had their names, they had their quirks, and we really had lots of really laugh out loud moments with these people, and learned tons of stuff. And as I was saying, the funniest one was obviously the internal one, where they were being the chair of the board, and all sorts of quirks came out. But what was amazing was that we really shifted the discussion, the dimension of this importance of the views of stakeholders in relation to this team. And moved it forward in a way that I couldn't imagine was going to work. And so it was really fun.
Fantastic. So using role plays, which a lot of people are resistant to role plays, and a lot of people love playing the baddies.
Do I think we also talked about the fact that we gave them a structure. We didn't say, just go out there and you've got 10 minutes to become a client. We want you to think about clients, give them a specific thing. These are the questions we want you to think about. What do you get from this team? What would you improve? So that there was a really constructive use of the time, which I think with online stuff, we also talked about the fact you can't leave people to just have a conversation because they're not very good at it. So give them something that gives them something to lean on, and then they'll have a conversation.
Great.
As we did with your question.
Great. A guide, questions, or a structure or something. Yeah. Noella?
So a quick note from our discussion, which was lovely, very, very wise ideas and fun. So one of the ideas would be like connecting with our childlike mind to release tension from such responsibility that we have day to day. Tell stories from our experience in disguise, like my friend Sam did that and that. Also create safety and connection through playing together and feeling awkward together. And what else? Improvisation, using props, drawing, and finger puppets, and whatever we have at hand in our homes.
Finger puppets. Isn't that fantastic? Hadn't thought about that. But if we all created little finger puppets on, that could be really fun. Thanks for that idea. Yeah. Great ideas. Any others? I guess that was all three groups sharing. I had some tips. These are not, I think you guys created a much broader set of tips. So please do use those that you already came up with. I just want to emphasize the positive mind. Emotions are contagious. So just make sure that you have what you need in order to be in a positive mindset in order to meet all your people. Celebrate successes and build on them. Not necessarily, that isn't about celebrate everything and make people think that everything is great, but really point out, here's what's working, celebrate that. Again, look for what is working. I was just reading an article yesterday about how much harder it is to notice what is working than what isn't. I think I mentioned something about that earlier, but keep focusing on what is working. Train yourself, discipline yourself to look there. And don't do that jump in and pointing out errors. And allow space for learners to find their way and be successful. I think some of you were saying that earlier too. Let people find. So Stephen, with your bicycle example, is like you work through these different things and you find your success and you know it when you feel it, and if somebody had been, standing over you going, do it like this, do it like that, it might not have been as powerful for you at learning. That's probably true for everything else you were discussing as well. So what's your one takeaway? Would love you to just add to the chat box, whole collection. What's your takeaway? That's one thing you will make sure that you do. Maybe it's something you're doing already that you want to just reinforce when you're working with people who are learning, whether it's your kids, coaching clients, leaders you're working on leadership development with, fellow ukulele players or actors. Positivity breeds success. Validate people, normalize failure and mistakes. Absolutely. Have fun always. More awareness of the importance of fun. Add to the learning process. Positivity, use props. Safety and clear six. Fantastic. Those are great. Thanks. Well, as always, I talk about one of our programs as we complete one of these sessions. So the way I want to talk about Rewired to Relate today is in terms of what we talked about today, in terms of learning. We've been putting programs together for quite some time. And in the last 3 years, we've been working on online programs. And we finally found seems like a magic formula that seems to work for people. We have an online program. So it's online access, people can access at their convenience, the material, the content. So there's not talking on a live webinar. Live webinars are for processing information and sharing together and that kind of thing. The content, short sound bites, short bits of written material, short videos, quizzes, interactive bits. Keep those short so people can access it, learn something, digest it, go away and use it. So that's one element that we've learned over time. Really keep it short. I'm always having to shorten everything I write. Condense it right down, be concise. exercises to make the material real. So help people apply it to their own worlds, give them examples. Here's ways you can apply it. Here's this week's work. And have social learning groups. Several of you have talked about, it's about the people I'm working with. So talking together with others about what you're learning, having like minds, coming together and discussing what this material does in their own world. Here's what happens for me. And again, you get that vulnerability and that oxytocin and that creating connections together. There are people from these programs that have continued. We've only been offering them for 6 months, but there are a couple of groups that have continued after the program. Every month they get together because they form such a tight bond. And again, the webinars are engaging activities. And looks like there's some comments here in the box. Thanks, Steve, for that. And there's further back, there's a link to our upcoming program, which is on May 4th. This program is offered for, this is just the structure of it. Here's what it's about. It's the essence of our leadership work. It's about so many different things. How our brain works in terms of emotions and managing emotions. How do you manage the behaviors that don't serve you? How do you understand? I get feedback all the time that now I understand well-being. A lot of us know that we need to take breaks and all of that, but this program is really about why is that so important? And with that why, it creates a lot more motivation for having the well-being and breaks and sleep and so on. Program's also about improving relationships, whether it's with clients or with colleagues or with family. And it increases your ability to focus, reason, and get things done. How to use your best brain for the work that you do. 6-week program. Whoa, where are we? 6-week program. Our next one starts the 4th of May. We have a couple of more happening in the autumn. For to put the link in the chat box. And you can always find it on shooksvensson.com. So there we go. Happy to talk more about that or have any other Q&A if anybody wants to stick around for a moment or two to have any final words or anything you want to say or ask. Otherwise, I'll say thank you for coming and see you next time. Thanks, Ellen. It was good to see you, Ellen, by the way. I didn't greet you when you came in. And Olivia.
Thanks, Laurie. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye, Terry. Bye.
Take care. Good to see you. See you next time.